Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. So here we see this woman's post, and she writes, the dating pool for young women is literally porn addicts, sensitive guys you have to perform constant emotional labor for, narcissistic if not sociopathic gym bros, emotionally distant manipulators, performative woke men who still treat women like beep poop. And then we have another post here where he's responding to this, and it writes, the dating pool for young men is literally mentally ill women that are 30 and looking to settle down, women doing OF, women with double-digit body counts. So you can see that Western values and sexual liberation have really gone off the rails and made society worse, and that the Christians have not done a good job in fixing the culture, guiding the culture. And Christianity was supposed to be a patriarchal religion, but they have let down their duty, and they are clearly not fit for the job. Now, there is a lot of mental illness in America, unfortunately, and we do need to be able to help people who are struggling with that. I think this has a lot to do with the chemicals in the water and food supply and the air that is causing a lot of this. When a woman is pregnant, it affects her baby, and then it also affects a man's quality of sperm. But further, it says that women that are 30 and looking to settle down. So this is a woman, the archetype that I've read that they mention is like women who they spent their entire 20s sleeping around, and they really took their beauty for granted. They had their prime, now they're quote unquote ran through and deflated, but they want to have a child, and it's like the men feel they're getting the scraps of the situation here. That she spent time rejecting men, sleeping around, giving it away for free, and then she ramps up her standards right as things are getting tighter in their ovulation schedule, right? So they don't feel like they got the best deal. Then women doing OF. This is really interesting because it's really growing as a problem in America, where right as chicks turn 18, they go down that path. This isn't sustainable for people. And yet, men are paying for it, Western men. And you see a lot of the Christians are freaking out about the hijab, the niqab and the burqa, which is peak modesty, while their women are doing OF. They've gone more to war with Islamic modesty than Western degeneracy. Fascinating, isn't it? So Christians are sitting here saying like, have the best values and this and that, and yet they can't kick out the degeneracy in America. They're not putting up a good fight. They're not making a case. They simply, I think personally, are very jealous of our ability to reduce the male gaze as a control factor upon us women. So like, especially for us reverts, we see our culture as in America like, wow, this is going off the walls. And then Islamic modesty becomes something very loved and adored, because we see where that leads to. How it's not a great way to live and die by the male gaze, but instead to cover that allure and not attract too many predators to you. And heterosexual men, they can't stop gooning oftentimes, and denying them that ability to goon upon you, to use you as some type of mental image, is a great thing. To sort of deny them that ability. Yet there are lots of Western women who think, no, make the money. Andrew Tate told Bonnie Blue, I did an entire detailed breakdown of that interview, literally almost minute by minute, where he called her based for not giving it away for free. And Tate made his millions in the beginning from getting women to do adult content. Okay? So you have Western men like Andrew Tate telling women they're based and smart when they make money from selling sin and degeneracy, right? And some women will say he was being satirical. Some men will say the same, but no. You look at the pattern of his history, who he highlights, the women he gives a platform to, the women who he spends time talking to. It's usually whores, to be quite honest. So women see, they're young, and they're like, hey, how do you get attention in this world? What has status? They see OF, right? So it's becoming very popular that America is going to go past France. France used to have the number one, even back when John Adams was like, I don't want our women to be like the French. Benjamin Franklin liked that hedonism. But France used to have that, the blonde and the red dress with the red lipstick. And they even outlawed today men from getting paternity tests. So they have such a problem with promiscuous women in France that they don't even allow men to have the right to find out if they're taking care of someone else's kids, right? So it's no wonder why they banned the hijab, and they hate Islam, because their culture is literally pornographic. It's been like that since long time, at least since the 17th century. So hundreds of years of degeneracy. And America is fast approaching them, and I think going to surpass them based on the type of music and actor and Hollywood scene we have here. So the guy has a point that the women today have more mental illness. They've been highly passed around, and men really do seem to care about having a wife who hasn't made content online. Now, there are exceptions, like losers like Adam22. Even the guy who has the channel Hot Wings, where people eat spicy chicken wings, and like they have an interview, he was dating an OF chick, I believe. People found out, and he couldn't handle the shame and the memes, and he left her, right? So you do see a sort of pushback. Now, Melania Trump, she has done nude photography before, and she did meet Trump on the Lolita Express, Jeffrey Epstein's plane. So there's a lot of questions about like what kind of quality woman she is. But again, it's important to see how hedonistic America is. So women doing OF is not off par. Let me give you an argument. So you have Hollywood has scenes where women are basically doing stuff like that on camera, and those women get famous for doing that. And I can't remember which director it was who said a woman on screen should either be dead or in a sex scene. Oh, I wish I could have. I gotta ask Grok or something to find that quote, which producer said it. But he basically was saying the quiet part out loud, And people have always mocked HBO as a network that pretty much knows you gotta show some type of hedonistic scene in order to get men to even watch. But others push back and say Lord of the Rings actually was a good example of how you create something iconic without using lust and degeneracy. So there's a whole wonderful conversation philosophically to be had about that. But this young man, he's not wrong in showing how the quality of women has gone down. But also here we see that the lady's not wrong. It's gross how men are behaving like that, but at the same time, we'll say, hey, well, let's make adult content illegal. But you have certain branches of feminists who say It's empowering for women to do that because they're taking control over their bodies and making money, and there's no middleman, there's no pimp and all that, so it should be allowed, right? And then you get a whole conversation about those sex positive feminists that you see on podcasts like whatever and all that, and quite frankly, it is a mess. It's quite a mess. And you also have women who become madams themselves and get women into that. And so what are you going to do, you know? And it's a problem. Then she mentioned sensitive guys. Now, it's funny because you see some of these whiny feminists say, well, we need to have men open up emotionally. But then these women are complaining now emotional labor. The rad femmes say that emotional labor in a relationship is taxing and tiring. But the liberal feminist says men are too cold and distant and should open up more. There's a lot of nuance here in these conversations of what women want in a partner. Now, the narcissist, I think that's overused, quite frankly. You know, I just ignore that word now because it's almost like any man who doesn't bend to your whims becomes a narcissist. I don't know. I just don't fall for it. Sociopaths, I think those are so rare, to be honest with you. So, just going to the gym doesn't make you a sociopath or a narcissist. It just means you like to stay fit. You know, they don't want to date obese men, so what's the solution here? I mean, who doesn't want their partner, their husband, their spouse to have a nice body, right? And she writes, emotionally distant manipulators, those ones are actually more attractive. A man who's too clinging and needing and whining and feelsy is feminine, is effeminate. But you don't want them to manipulate you. But that cold, distant, stoic behavior is more erotic because there's more mystery, I'd argue. She says performative woke men, so see that? Even if you're a liberal and you are a male feminist, still not good. And they still think you treat women like garbage. So, again, there's solutions to the adult hedonism everywhere, but women will call it sexist, you know? But then there's women who, when they design a video game, they say that she should be more realistic body proportions. But then men don't want to buy those games. I believe back in the day there was, I think, the movement called Gamergate or something, and there was that red-headed, big red feminist. She had like red hair, big black rimmed glasses, and there was that feminist Anita Sarkeesian. These are like old feminists, like old school feminists. I don't know how old they are now, but this is like years ago. And there was this whole conversation about body expectations in art, and then you can see how the Japanese culture comes in where they cartoonify and animate women's bodies, and then how this creates body dysmorphia, and then men prefer cartoons over real women's bodies and what it looks like postpartum. Huge conversation. But it is true that adult content is ruining men and women, right? It's really a problem, but that's Western values. Right? They fight against the hijab, they fight against the burqa, the niqab, then they push hedonism, and then they see the results of, you know, how that creates. So, it's interesting to look at the conversation here. Let me know what you think, but it's quite a mess, and I think that when people talk about Islam in a negative way, they often don't see the beauty of Islam and how Islam reduces that overarching lust vibe in society, and things are more calm and steady, I'd argue, than a society that plasters half-nude women everywhere and then expects men to what? Not look? It's really weird. So they'll be like Western values and women in bikinis and yoga pants and crop tops and mini skirts and high heels, and then they expect their man to just like not fall prey to that. That's a huge like standard to go through. So, you know, again, and then notice the balance she says of sensitive guys versus emotionally distant. Whew. I mean, you're always gonna have a spectrum, right? So it's a mess out there, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help the believers in America and help America to become more Islamic, because I think that the Christians haven't done a good job in preserving anything, and the secular liberal atheists have gone a bit off the rails, quite frankly. And so Islam, I believe, is the remedy for that. Let me know what you think.